All right, what's up? It has been a while since I've been on YouTube. The last video you would have seen was the week leading up to my Ironman. And this video is a full race breakdown of how my Ironman actually went. So if you guys don't know, I completed a solo full distance Ironman on September 2nd, so pretty much exactly 2 weeks today. And yeah, if you were following along, you would have seen how much kind of went wrong leading up to the race. So there was like a bunch of circumstances that made for it to not be the most ideal setup coming into the race. From the very beginning, I only gave myself like 3 months, really like 11 weeks to actually train for it, because I competed in 2 bodybuilding shows and then immediately started Ironman prep. So I was already a little bit constrained. And then my initial plan was to do an Ironman 70.3, which is half the distances. And then I found out 5 weeks out that I had actually signed up for a full distance Ironman. If you're new to the channel, you're probably like, how the fuck does somebody manage to accidentally sign up for a full distance Ironman? Coming off of bodybuilding prep, or during bodybuilding prep is when I signed up, and I was just like, I just wasn't there fully. And I just missed a couple things in the registration clearly that would have told me that no, there wasn't 2 races at this event. It was just a full distance Ironman. So I found out 5 weeks out that I had to do double the distances: a 3.8 kilometer swim, 180 kilometer bike ride, and then a marathon. My furthest run up to that was 1 marathon. I'd only ever ran a marathon distance once. It took me 4 hours and 20 minutes, and that was in November of last year. And then I had only ever biked about 100 kilometers at that point, and then I'd only ever swam like 2.5 kilometers. So that was 5 weeks out my training status at that point. I was nowhere near the capability of being able to do a full distance Ironman. But I saw it as kind of a blessing. I was like, I've always wanted to do a full distance Ironman. I was planning to do one next year anyways. So I was like, subconsciously, maybe I just accidentally signed myself up for one on purpose. And I was just like, you know what, this is really what I want to do. And let's see kind of what I'm capable of. So I followed through with it. I was like, you know what, I'm still going to do the race. So then I ramped up training for 3 weeks really hard to accumulate as much volume as I could. And again, it wasn't ideal, but I was like, I can do this. My brand and the thing I talk about a lot is staying in the work. So I was in the work. I knew mentally that I could handle this, and I knew that I would get that job done. Then I had some family emergencies, and I've talked about that in a previous video, that came up, which caused me to pretty much not train for 2 full weeks. I had to fly home, and I just had to be there for my family, and things just took precedent over training. I didn't swim or bike for 3 weeks, and then I ran maybe like twice. So my taper was all messed up. I just had a lot of things that happened, and I really wasn't anywhere near the most ideal standpoint fitness-wise to do a full distance Ironman. And then the race got canceled because of forest fires. And if you've watched my previous videos, that all explains it. But that in a nutshell is the Coles notes of how it was just a super unideal circumstance coming into my first Ironman. That being said, I decided I was going to do a solo Ironman. I needed to see this goal through. There was no way I was quitting at that point, and I needed to close that loop. So I made a plan. I laid out a course where I live to do a full distance Ironman, and I had a support crew, and I had people that were going to film it, and you're going to see the actual like high quality footage of the whole race day in another video. We're still editing that. It's going to be really sweet. I'm excited, but this video is just to tell you how the race went, and we did it. I did a full distance Ironman completely on my own. I won. I came first. If you guys want to win your first Ironman, just do a solo one. Make your own event, and you're always going to win. So it didn't go as planned is really the biggest message here. My goal was 13 hours. That was my goal the whole time. I was like, if I could do 13 hours or under, I'd be super happy with that for my first Ironman, considering the fact that I really was not trained at all for this Ironman. And then it ended up taking me 15 hours and 50 minutes. So I'm gonna break down exactly why it took so long. So starting with the swim, I was super nervous leading into the swim. For some reason, that was a thing I was really fixated on because I hadn't swam much, and all of my swims hadn't really felt good leading into the race. So I was quite nervous. I hadn't done enough open water swimming over the last 3 weeks, but in hindsight, it really went the best out of everything that day. So the swim, I ended up doing an hour and 37 minutes. And my goal for the swim was an hour 20 before everything happened. So I wasn't too upset with that. It was like a 2:32 per 100 meter pace. I swam 3,832 meters. So I was happy with that. I was like, when I came out of the water, my shoulders were just destroyed. That was the one thing that was like really hard, was my shoulders and my traps. Just, I could tell I was not conditioned for swimming that duration. So during, I was like, oh, this is bad. Like this is gonna be a slow time. But when I came out of the water, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I was like, that's not too bad to lose 17 minutes. I was okay with that. I could swallow it. And all things considered, like it went pretty well. I had my girlfriend on a paddleboard, so I was able to see where I was going. The sun was like blinding, so I was like steering off course. If you look at like the actual map of my swim, it's like, it's all wavy because it was hard for me to really see where I was going. But all things considered, I was happy. I was happy with it. It didn't go too bad in hindsight. So I get out of the water and then I hop on the bike. And this is the thing I was the most excited for, the thing I'm most confident in. I've been biking my whole life, mountain biking, road biking, it all comes easy to me. It's something that I'm quite good at, and my leg strength and my leg power has always been a strong suit for me. So I was hoping to do 6 hours and 30 minutes on the bike, and all of my long rides leading up to that told me that was possible for sure. But the bike course that I laid out, this is pretty much the reason that I ended up 2 hours and 50 minutes longer than expected, was because of the bike. The bike course that I laid out, if I had done the full thing, would have been over 9,000 feet of elevation. I didn't calculate that correctly beforehand, and I should have done more due diligence. I had laid out that it was going to be 6,000 feet, but I was skipping the section. Basically, I rode 42 kilometers from where I swam to a section that was a 20K loop, basically. And this loop has no cars on it. So it's really perfect for road biking. I don't like riding around cars. It always makes me nervous. And there would be stoplights and all of that, because when you're in a real race, it's open. They shut down the roads, right? I wasn't gonna have that. So I didn't want to be on the roads and have to deal with like constant stopping and deal with cars. So I biked 42 kilometers, but I didn't account for a lot of that elevation. And I didn't calculate the actual elevation of the section correctly, because they closed down a 4-kilometer section of the track that was relatively flat. So that, I won't break it all down, but that math equated to like an extra 3,000 feet of elevation that I wasn't accounting for, because I was gonna have to lap the 20K section that was a lot of elevation. It's basically just like a steady climb up and then a steady climb down. It's kind of rolling hills, so it's very deceiving. It doesn't seem that like that much climbing, but it is. It's actually a significant amount of climbing. So I got there, I felt strong, I felt good on the bike, I started lapping it, and things were going pretty good until 90 kilometers. And then I started cramping. My legs started cramping. And if you know anything about endurance sports, like this, like if you start cramping that early on in such a long race, that's a bad sign. You really don't want to have any cramp. Ideally, no cramping shows up, but like it's more like on the run, you would expect that. The last thing I expected was to start cramping on the bike. Now, this is due to two things. I didn't hydrate well enough the days leading up to it. I thought I had, but I really should have pushed more water and more electrolytes leading into it. But the bigger issue was that I just wasn't conditioned for that much climbing. I hadn't done enough cycling because of everything that happened, and I hadn't accumulated a lot of distance, and my legs just weren't ready. That was really it. My legs just couldn't handle that amount of climbing. So by the time I was like around 100 kilometers, any sort of incline, I would get there and I would immediately start cramping. My quads would lock up, and it was brutal. Like it hurt bad. And then I was like, I literally cannot climb at this point. If I climb, I cramp so bad that I almost had to get off the bike. So then I was left in this position where I was like, I can't really change things on the fly because my support crew is meeting me at certain points at certain times. It's not like I can leave this area and go ride on the road and then I'm gonna have to deal with the cars and everything like that. But I also physically cannot keep lapping this. I couldn't climb those hills without cramping. And I still had to run a marathon. So I was like, if I just push through this and cramp so bad, I won't even be able to run later. So then I had to make the executive decision to lap the flattest section that I could find, which is the first 3 kilometers of this area. So I would basically ride 3 kilometers out, turn around, 3 kilometers back. So 6 kilometers. And I had to do that for another 85 kilometers to finish the ride. That broke me. Like it was like 13 laps or something like that of just 3 kilometers out, turn around 3 kilometers back. And I was just going insane. Like I was just losing it on the bike. Like I was just so flies. I was just so like beat mentally. Like I wasn't beat in the sense that like I felt like I wasn't going to be able to finish this thing. It was like I was having zero fun. There was zero enjoyment. It was just suffering. It was so mundane just to lap this same section back. Get there, as soon as you get into a rhythm, turn around, go back, turn around, go back. And it was killing me. Like, and then and my legs were like still an issue. I could keep the cramping at bay with enough sodium and water, and these flatter sections were helping me keep a faster pace. But I had already slowed down so much when I started cramping, and because of the climbing, that I was well behind my ideal pace. And then I was just going crazy. Like I was literally just losing it on the bike. It just felt like I was just like, it was torture, just doing the same thing over and over so many times. So that really broke me, and I didn't have anybody else riding with me. I was completely alone for 7.5 hours. The bike took me 7 hours, 35 minutes, and 4 seconds for 180.28 kilometers. My average pace was 24 kilometers an hour. My goal was 30 kilometers an hour, which was a comfortable pace for me. If I had just a little bit of a flatter section. And where I live here in North Vancouver, it's hard to avoid elevation. So I was kind of going to have to deal with that regardless, but like 9,000 feet of elevation is just insane. Like it's just absolutely insane. Even if I was prepared, that would have killed me. And so that's on me. I really made the mistake of like just not calculating everything properly and accidentally signing myself up for an insane amount of climbing. So that's how the bike went. 7 hours and 30 minutes. So I was an hour behind on the bike at this point. And then now I was in this situation where when I finished the bike, I was crushed. Like I was just so crushed. I wasn't having fun. I didn't enjoy it. It was brutal. And like, it's not to say that obviously this is something that's super hard. You're not supposed to enjoy it per se, but I really like biking. And I was very much of the mindset that day, like I'm just going out, I'm biking all day. I get to swim in this beautiful area. I'm gonna have tons of scenery. And, I just didn't experience that, you know, like I just didn't have, I just wasn't having fun. And like I didn't have to have fun the whole day. I knew that wouldn't happen, but I wanted to enjoy it. And that was like, even though it's suffering, it's still enjoyable to like be seeing a bunch of stuff and like going down the hills and going fast and whatever. I just didn't get that. So by the time I got off the bike, I was crushed. I had nothing left. I was defeated, but not defeated in the way that, like mentally I felt like I couldn't keep going. It was like I was defeated that my body was defeated, if that makes sense. And this was the overarching takeaway, is that in my previous endurance events and anything I've done physically, mentally, it was always the challenge of like, can I keep pushing? Can I keep going? Because physically I probably could. I just had to push through that discomfort. This time it was like, no, my body is failing. Like I couldn't get the cramping to relax. I just felt so beat, and like my body wouldn't let me climb those hills. No matter how hard I tried, no matter mentally, I just couldn't get the cramping to stop. So it was like a flip of what I'm used to, where mentally I was like, I just want to push. I just want to be able to not cramp and just do these hills. But I physically could not. And that really took a toll on me. So transition, then when I got off the bike, I took a 15-minute transition, 18 minutes actually. So that wasn't planned. I was aiming for like 5 to 7 minute transitions if possible. My transition off the swim was 5 minutes and 50 seconds. So that was much more appropriate. And those 18 minutes obviously added to my time, but it was just, I needed it. Like I just sat in this lawn chair and just chilled out and ate some food, lots of sodium, lots of water, because I really needed to get my cramping under control at that point. And to be honest, I just didn't want to go. Like I was trying to talk to my girlfriend and Hugh, who was filming, I was like, oh, how's your day? How are you guys feeling? Like, I was just trying to make conversation so that they wouldn't be like, no, get up and go. And then eventually they did. They're like, all right, it's time, you got to move. So switched my shoes, changed my socks, threw a shirt on, and then I went out for the run. And it was so unimaginably hard to wrap my head around that I was going to run a marathon at that point. My body was just so stiff. Like, it was like when I stood up, it's like I was peeling open my chest and my shoulders and my traps. Like, everything was just so locked from being in that position for so long. And my upper body was destroyed. I didn't expect that, like how sore I was gonna be just from supporting my weight on the bike and the swim and everything. So my upper body was just trashed at that point. Anyway, I threw my stuff on, I started out running. I ran maybe like a kilometer and then cramping again. And so then I had to walk, and that's pretty much how the run went for the first 5K. I'd run a kilometer, walk 500 meters, run a kilometer, walk 500. I just repeated that. And that was, again, it was demoralizing. I was like, and I knew at that point I wasn't gonna break 13 hours. There was no way. And then I was like, and it's hard for me, I'm very performance-based, and yes, the goal was just to finish, but I also wanted to do well. I wanted to hit the time that I had set out for myself. So it was demoralizing, but I was like, okay, now I need to shift gears, I just need to finish. And then I got in a good rhythm. After about 5 kilometers, I was able to run like 3-kilometer stretches. It was somewhat downhill, which was nice, and my quads were okay. A lot of the sodium and water had kicked in at that point. I wasn't cramping as bad. And I was able to run, I think, 16 kilometers in about, let me look here. I was able to run like 16 kilometers in like an hour 45, which wasn't too bad. I was pretty happy with that. And I had a lot of that downhill section. Then I met up with my support crew again, and my 2 buddies, Max and Cooper, they ran with me. So then they came out and they ended up running 25 kilometers with me, which was like a saving grace. That helped so much. But at that point, I was starting to cramp again, and I was like really feeling it. Like, my body was just like giving up. We ran over the bridge into Stanley Park, and then I was like kind of slow going up the bridge because it's actually steeper than I thought. And then coming down, I was able to catch a good rhythm for another like 1.5 kilometers, and I was able to run most of that. Met up with the crew again there, got some fuel, and then I started lapping a 10-kilometer loop around Stanley Park. So at that point, I was at 18 kilometers. So it was basically 2 10K loops and then another 4 kilometers. The first loop, I went out and my body was really struggling. I was cramping bad, and my stomach really started to feel not good. This is something I was prepared for with endurance events. When you're eating gels and simple sugars and electrolytes all day, your digestion can get uncomfortable. So my stomach just really started to hurt, but I was able to push through it. The last half of that, I was kind of walking, running, and then I was able to push most of the last half of that loop. So 5 kilometers, and I was running at a good pace, like 5:45, 6-minute kilometers, which was good for me at that point. So I was gaining steam and I was feeling okay. And then I got back at 28 kilometers, and then I had one more full loop. This point, it's dark. I'm well behind my schedule. I'm probably like 4 hours in maybe at this point already. So I was over my time, and I was just, okay, I just need to finish. After that loop, there was a bunch of other people that had showed up to see me finish. So I had this big support crew, which was amazing. It was so nice to have all those people there, but I sat down on the hill, and there's footage of it that you'll see in my next Ironman video, my full race day video, of me sitting on that hill just defeated, like just absolutely crushed. I think because I pushed hard on that last 5K, then my body was just like, we're done. This is it. Like, you need to stop now. Apparently I was completely white. I hadn't seen myself, but I was like as white as a sheet of paper. I looked really bad. I could barely talk. And everybody's kind of standing over me, like looking at me, shining lights on me, like, you got this, like being very positive, but it was hard for me to believe at that point, and I was very overwhelmed by everybody standing over top of me, and I was feeling sick. And at this point, I really couldn't get any food in. I hadn't had a gel in probably 45 minutes at that point. I hadn't had any food. I knew I needed something. So I got some grapes in me and some electrolytes, and that was it. That was all I ate. From that point on, I didn't eat anything until after the race because I just couldn't. I just had nothing. I had nothing left. Like my stomach hurt so bad at that point, and I was starting to feel nauseous, and that's why I was very white, and I just looked really bad. Then I was very overwhelmed by all the people standing over me, so I was like, hey, I just got to stand up and start going. My friends were still going to do that loop with me, and another friend joined me for that loop as well. So there was 4 of us, which helped a lot, but I ended up having to walk pretty much that entire 10 kilometers. And this is where I lost so much time. The marathon went from maybe like 5-hour finish to 6 hours. What was my total time? It was 6 hours and 14 minutes to run a marathon. So I was maybe around 4 hours at that point, and then it took me a full hour and a half to walk that 10 kilometer, like walk/run. I tried to run a little bit. The problem was I was cramping still, so I couldn't push for too long because I would start to cramp. But it was mostly my nausea. I felt so ill. Like every time I would start to kind of jostle, like running and bouncing, it was a no-go. I couldn't. I was like, I felt like I was gonna throw up, and then I knew if I threw up all that liquid, I was gonna get so dehydrated that then I might go into full body cramps and I might not even be able to finish. So then it was a tough decision because I was like, I just wanted to push because mentally I was like, I know I can do this. Again, mentally I was still okay. I knew I could finish. I knew I could will myself to push. Like mentally, I've developed a very strong mentality around being able to deal with suffering, but I couldn't get that feeling of being ready to throw up away, and I couldn't get my quads to stop cramping. So it was like I could push and push through the suffering, but then the suffering came to a point where my legs literally would not relax and I couldn't take another step. And then I was so close to feeling like I was gonna throw up that I just couldn't keep pushing because I was like, if I throw up, that's bad news, and I just need to finish. So then I had to call. I was like, I have to just walk. And that was so hard for me, like, because it was so frustrating. That was the best words to describe. I was so frustrated internally because I was like, I know I can do this. I know I can run, but my body just wouldn't let me. And it was so frustrating. So then I just kind of power walked. I just had to walk. So I'm like walking like a 10, 11 minute kilometer pace. So I was just so slow. So it takes me like an hour 45 to walk that 10 kilometers, and it's nighttime and I'm just trying to trudge along. I could barely even speak. I was so destroyed at this point, like physically. I was so wrecked and frustrated, and just like, I was like, I'm gonna finish this, but like, I was just beat. I was like, man, this is so demoralizing. Like, this isn't how I wanted it to go. But again, the goal was to finish, and everything that happened, all the circumstances leading up to it, I was just happy to finish. So I get back from that last loop. Now I'm at 38 kilometers ran, and then I just had 4 more kilometers. So at this point, I was actually in a lot more, once I got back, I was more positive spirits. I was like, I'm just gonna go walk these 4 kilometers and then I'm done. So I went out with my buddy, Justin. He walked with me. I couldn't run. I tried to run a few times and I just couldn't because I was about to throw up. And my quads were so wrecked. I started cramping all the way up my inner thigh into my groin and my hips, and everything was just locking up as soon as I tried to run. So walking is all I could do. Walked those 4 kilometers, came back and finished. And they had set up like an actual finish line with like a red ribbon and everything. So I was able to run through that. I ran the last 200 meters. I just suffered through it. And at that point I was like elated. I was so stoked. I was like, wow, I did it. Like 15 hours, the total finish time was 15 hours, 50 minutes, and 37 seconds. I covered 226.69 kilometers. I burned 7,700 calories throughout the day, according to my Garmin watch, and I did over 55,000 steps for the day. So by far the longest event, the biggest physical task I've ever, not even close. The biggest thing I'd done before that was a 7.5 hour brick workout during Ironman prep that was cycling and running. The furthest race I'd ever done was a marathon. So it was 4 hours and 20 minutes. So this was such uncharted territory. Once I crossed that 7 hour mark, I had no idea how my body was gonna feel. I didn't know how my digestion was gonna go. So I ended up getting a lot of valuable information for when I do something like this again. And I'm 100% gonna do another Ironman. I need redemption. I'm so happy to finish, but I'm very much like proud but never satisfied. I'm again, being in the work means staying in the work. That's something you guys will hear me say endlessly. Stay in the work, stay moving, stay process driven, keep pursuing a goal. So for me, I finished, and I was so happy to finish, and I was so grateful for everybody that helped me throughout the day. That was the biggest thing. I was like, wow, I have all these people that spent 16 hours almost throughout the day with me, showed up in the morning, saw me off for the swim, filmed everything, and just giving me what I needed. Do you need food? Do you need water, electrolytes? And just like driving around, watching me finish at 11 p.m., pitch blackout. It meant the world to me. Like, I couldn't stress that enough, how much that meant to me. I felt undeserving of it. I was like, wow, these people are fantastic people, like fantastic. Like, just, I can't stress enough how grateful I was. And it really meant the world to me that people were willing to show up for me like that. So it was beautiful, like the fact that I was able to finish this and talk about like adversity leading up to it. It was very poetic that there was so much adversity in the actual race as well, because the definition of this Ironman prep was adversity and just obstacles along the way. But again, the obstacle is the way. If you've ever read Ryan Holiday's book called The Obstacle is the Way, it'll really teach you that. And I'm a firm believer in that. So as soon as you see something hard and difficult and something that you're bad at, that's the direction you go. You pursue that head on, because on the other side of that is a ton of accomplishments that you never thought was possible, and that reinstills a lot of confidence. And you don't gain confidence by just telling yourself that you're confident and you're beautiful and you're deserving of that. You gain confidence by real world examples of things that you have accomplished that have proven that to you. So it was a massive day. I'm gonna do another race. I'm gonna do a full distance Ironman prep. That's gonna be months on end. I'm gonna film the whole thing, and I'm gonna crush that 13-hour goal. I'm gonna crush it. Like, I'm positive of that, and I can't wait for it. I can't wait to see what I am really capable of in those long distance triathlons. That's gonna be next year. I'm gonna talk about that later. But yeah, that's the full race breakdown. So you guys you guys know kind of how it went. If you followed this entire journey, it was a long one, and I really appreciate you following along. Now it's powerlifting prep. So you guys know that I'm on this hybrid athlete challenge for the year of 2023, 2 bodybuilding shows, an Ironman, and a powerlifting meet all in 1 year. So I'm putting my body through hell. I have already started powerlifting prep. I am about a week in. I finished my first full week of powerlifting prep this week. Later this week, you're gonna see my first video announcing powerlifting prep and what my full plan is for powerlifting prep. And it's just time to get fat and strong, gain weight, get as strong as possible, build as much muscle as I can this winter. And yeah, I have some big goals, and we're gonna get strong. So I'm super excited. But yeah, that's Ironman prep. It's complete. There's one more video that you're gonna see, which is a super high quality race day video. I can't wait to release it. It's gonna be amazing. I know you guys are gonna love it. And yeah, I'm super grateful for you guys. If you're paying attention to this journey, it really means a lot to me, the fact that you're taking time out of your day to watch these videos. So thank you so much. Stay in the work, and I'll see you in the next one.